Have you ever wondered why you're here, in this moment, living this life? What if everything you've gone through, all the challenges, the setbacks, the victories, has been leading you to a purpose far greater than you can imagine? Right now, you may feel unnoticed, unsure, or even unworthy. You may feel like the road you're on doesn't make sense or that your efforts don't matter. But what if, like Esther, you were born for such a time as this? Imagine for a moment that every experience, every choice, every tear has been molding you, shaping you into someone who is here, right now, for a divine purpose. Let's take a journey back in time. Thousands of years ago, there was a powerful kingdom, the Persian Empire, ruled by a king named Xerxes. This was a vast empire, stretching from India to Ethiopia, filled with all kinds of cultures, languages, and people. And within this kingdom, hidden among the masses, was a young woman who was about to discover her destiny. Her name was Esther. She wasn't born into royalty. She didn't come from wealth or power. In fact, she was an orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai after losing her parents at a young age. Esther knew hardship. She knew what it meant to feel alone, to wonder where she belonged. But God had a plan, and though Esther didn't know it yet, she was about to be placed in a position that would change the course of history. Now, Esther wasn't seeking fame or position. She wasn't striving to make a name for herself. She was simply living her life, doing what was right in the sight of God, without any thought that she would one day be chosen to become the Queen of Persia. It happened unexpectedly, through circumstances far beyond her control. King Xerxes, after dismissing his previous queen, needed a new queen. A search was made throughout the kingdom for young women to come before the king, and Esther, this young Jewish girl, was chosen to be part of that search. Imagine her surprise, her shock, when she was taken from her simple life and brought into the king's palace. The Bible tells us that Esther was beautiful, but it wasn't just her outward beauty that set her apart. There was something deeper about Esther, something that made her stand out in a way others couldn't. And when she finally stood before the king, he was so taken with her that he made her his queen. Now, becoming queen might sound like a fairy tale ending, but this was just the beginning for Esther. You see, there was a darkness growing within the kingdom, a plan that would soon threaten her people, the Jewish people. A man named Haman, one of the king's top officials, had a deep hatred for the Jews and devised a plan to destroy them all. Think about that for a moment. Esther had been placed in this position of influence, yet she was still hidden. No one knew she was Jewish, not even the king. But God knew. God saw her. He knew why she was there. She was about to discover the reason she had been elevated to the palace at this specific time. When Mordecai learned of Haman's plot to destroy the Jews, he was devastated. He mourned and sent a message to Esther, urging her to go before the king and plead for the lives of her people. But this wasn't a simple request. In Persian law, even the queen couldn't just approach the king without being summoned. Doing so could mean death. Esther knew this, and she hesitated. She was faced with a choice that we all face in our own lives. Do we step out in faith, even when it's risky? Or do we stay in the shadows, hoping someone else will take on the responsibility? Esther was afraid, as any of us would be. She wasn't sure what to do. But then came the powerful words of Mordecai, words that still resonate in our hearts today. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? For such a time as this. These words are more than just a question posed to Esther. They are a question posed to you. Could it be that all you've been through, every challenge, every battle, every moment of doubt, has been preparing you for this moment? Could it be that you are where you are right now, not by accident, but because God has a purpose for your life? Esther had to make a choice. Would she step into the unknown, risking her own life for the sake of her people, or would she remain silent, hoping someone else would save the day? In that moment, Esther chose faith. She chose courage. She chose to trust in God's plan, even when fear whispered, "Stay silent." Esther called for a fast. She asked her people to pray and seek God's face. And then, after 3 days, she put on her royal robes and walked into the king's presence uninvited, risking her life. She didn't know what would happen. She didn't know if the king would grant her request or condemn her, but she walked forward in faith. And God met her there. The king extended his scepter, granting her favor. Esther then revealed the evil plot against her people. And because of her bravery, her willingness to trust in God's timing and purpose, the Jewish people were saved. What about you? What is God asking of you in this moment? It may not be saving an entire nation, but it could be something just as significant in God's eyes. Maybe He's asking you to step into a difficult conversation. Maybe He's asking you to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. Maybe He's calling you to pursue a dream that seems impossible. Whatever it is, know this. Just like Esther, God is with you. He has called you for such a time as this. You may not feel qualified. You may feel like you've been overlooked, or that your past disqualifies you from being used by God. But hear this truth today. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Esther wasn't perfect. She wasn't fearless. But God used her, flaws and all, to accomplish His divine purpose. And He can use you too. Think about your life for a moment. Every step you've taken, every moment of pain, every moment of joy, every season of waiting, it's all been woven into a tapestry of purpose. You may not see the full picture yet, but God is not finished with you. Right now, He is working behind the scenes, just as He did for Esther. You are here for a reason. You are alive for a purpose. Don't ever doubt that. Now is your time. Now is your moment. What will you do with it? Will you step forward in faith, trusting that God has placed you where you are for a reason? Will you choose courage over fear? Your story may not be written in the pages of the Bible, but it's being written in eternity. The decisions you make, the steps you take, they will impact not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Maybe God is calling you to be a light in your family, to bring healing to broken relationships. Maybe He's asking you to be a voice of encouragement to someone who's struggling. Or maybe He's calling you to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult, just like Esther did. Whatever it is, know that God is with you. He has gone before you, and He is walking with you. You are part of His great story, and the choices you make today will echo into eternity. So rise up, walk in the purpose God has given you. Remember Esther, and remember that just as she was called for such a time as this, so are you. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their purpose. Let's walk this journey of faith together. You are not alone. In the comments below, share your experience. What has God been teaching you? Where do you feel He is calling you in this season of your life? We'd love to hear how He's moving in your journey. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more motivation and encouragement as we grow in faith together. You are here for a reason. You were made for such a time as this.